Hi, Milad. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's symposium conversation, which is a little different than most weeks because it's just the two of us. And we'll be talking about the experience that you had composing this piece, I Cried, inspired by your painting Thought, which I had the honor of premiering with the cellist Andrew Jans, which was such a great experience. So maybe if we could just start off, I would love to hear a little bit about, how the piece was inspired by the painting and by all the other artistic visions that you have.
Hi, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And sure, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about it. So it was first when I heard from you and Andrew about the commission, I was very excited because I knew you were playing from a few years back, and so I had a full vision of what to write in terms of creativity and imagination. So I was very excited and happy to experience new things in order to write this piece. And uh, luckily, actually, I've been thinking about recent accident that happened in Kabul in my hometown, which this piece is inspired by. So I wrote this poetry called this poem "I Cried," which was inspired by the painting that is also attached to it, and also which later on lead it to this I Cried piece that I wrote.
It's beautiful. And how does the painting Thought also fit into that narrative?
So that's a very good question because before I used to be very inspired by the form itself. So I used to write everything in forms, and then there are times that we just want to be free without limiting our imagination and ideas or limiting ourselves. We just want to go beyond that. So I would say my sense of sorrow and pain was so much intense that I didn't want it to follow any form, and I wanted to show it through my poem and also the painting Thought, which is the Dwindling Dervish. But at the same time, it's not like I had also another collaboration with Sandeep Das of Dwindling Dervishes where he composed a piece. So that's more structured painting, and this one Thought is, I think, if you focus, you can hear. I mean, you can see a little bit of this Dwindling Dervish, but it's more an abstract way of different colors, which is related to my synesthesia and my interpretation of colors. So it's more like a free, and I want to express myself beyond any form or any other structure.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And I remember when you sent the score to me and Andrew, it was just like this really inspiring thing to receive because you had the painting Thought, you had the poem I Cried, and then you had the music. So it's like you gave us this sort of uh, multi-artistic lens with which we could try to get into your world and try to really do our best to bring into the world the sounds that were coming out of this sort of collaboration of your poetry, your painting, your music, which are all just this one cohesive sort of vision. And it was just a real honor for both of us to explore that.
So it's an honor for me also because, as I mentioned, when I heard that it was commissioned by you and Andrew, I was so excited because uh, I think your playing is so beautiful. And when I composed this piece, and I had you and Andrew in mind, and it's really a great opportunity for a composer to know the performer, and and especially when you have worked with many artists who are many you played many musics which is based on like improvisation on inspiration, which is beyond like in structure. So I had like and also I had this feeling in my inside that okay, this is a great opportunity to express myself and go beyond what I've done before. So it's a unique piece for me too because um so when I use the pencils to start the piece on a strings which is represents. I wanted to have the sound of santur, which is a Persian instrument which is also played in India, Pakistan, and parts of Middle East, which is so I wanted to. This is like called the santur hammer, which I used. So it creates almost the same sound that when you try to touch the strings of the piano, it creates a very, or with a pencil, it creates a very similar sound to Santur. So I wanted to kind of relate it to my hometown in a way. And it was, I think I would say, uh, so that's been my favorite work so far because I went beyond what I used to compose, what I used to write before. So it was really a wonderful opportunity to see you, especially perform this piece and go beyond I'd say like structure or any form or so it was just myself and music and just color in the canvas and painting. So it was just a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much, Milad. And I think I feel, well, when Andrew and I were rehearsing this piece before we recorded it, we were having that same feeling of like getting into this sort of like stream of consciousness music where it wasn't so uh, I'm used to playing so much Germanic music, which is so structured and, which is great and wonderful for learning and figuring out who you are as an artist in certain ways. But um, with the music that you presented to us, it was like we could just play and experiment with the worlds that were created. And especially the very beginning snippet where, I was using the number two pencils inside the piano and Andrew's very delicately playing the strings. And I also really loved how you really encouraged us to be composers as performers in improvising and giving us bones, but giving us a sort of, uh, you know, the fundamentals of how the piece should go, but encouraging us to dig within ourselves to be brave to improvise because it's hard when you're trained as a classical musician to improvise if you're not trained in you're not trained to improvise, you're trained to follow the score. So that was really challenging for me, and so that was a really like great experience.
Oh, I'm so glad, and I think you're being modest. I think it was a wonderful premiere, and I heard it with my host family and really loved it. And because every composer has a certain expectation from the performer, so you have kind of fulfill you and Andrew fulfill all those expectations. And also, I either as a classically trained myself, like as a pianist, also knew that there's also an improviser inside each one of us because and we are sometimes scared to kind of help that improviser come out. And because when I played like as you like dramatic music like of Schubert or Beethoven or any other composers, so I was feeling always nervous. I thought, okay, what if I play a wrong note? What if here I have a memory slip? Or what if? So I said, well, I want to be a composer where I don't want to give anxiety to the performer rather than like telling them that, okay, you're also a composer, just dive deep into yourself and then you will find that. So I wrote that piece and I don't mind any wrong with or anything because I believe that's also part of the performance. So so I was really enjoying when I see the performance and when I see you and Andrew playing it, and also it was other fewer composition. So that's what, as a composer, it meant a lot to me to see, okay, whatever I had in mind is kind of coming to reality, and it's not impossible, it's possible. So it gave me an idea of, I mean, I'm working and I have an idea of working on a concerto same way, where no one could feel like an anxiety of playing it or losing it or having memory slips or so it helped me, it inspired me in a way to go farther even and dive deeper into the world of being free and expressing yourself.
I love that. I love this idea of composing in a way where you don't give the performers anxiety, where it's like creating a comfortable space for them to perform the music that's written on the page, but also dig deep and challenge themselves to be their own improvisers. And the beauty of that is that, every performance is going to be different no matter what you're playing, but that really shines light on the individual processes. Like no performance will ever be the same of the concerto you write or of this piece that you wrote for Andrew and me. So that's that's really beautiful, and I really look forward to seeing what happens next.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and So thanks for giving me the idea and the inspiration to write for orchestra and instruments. So the concerto, same thing. So I would have like a section of the scale, and then I would ask the performer to play whatever they think for 30 seconds, whatever comes to their mind, even if it's one note or even it's like two notes. I'm sure they can play two notes. That's not a challenge. So that would, at least that will increase the anxiety of the performance. So since I was one of those guys that still still have anxiety, I think it's a common thing, stage fright and other anxiety, which so I wanted to kind of myself to help others in the future not to feel the same way as I did.
Yeah, I have stage fright too. And I can't imagine the stage fright after a year of no live performances, like what that will be like when you go back on stage. Maybe it will be easier or maybe it will be worse. I don't really know. So yeah, if your concerto is ready by then, or if you have some rep that's ready that will create these kinds of fluid spaces for performers to improvise and avoid that kind of anxious thought of like, oh, I'm going to miss a note or I'm going to mess it up, or which is like, gets you into a cycle where you start to doubt yourself and then the audience can tell that you're doubting yourself. Because the key to for me, like when I feel that I perform the best, it's when I totally believe what I'm doing, because that confidence can communicate the most effectively to the audience. Whereas like when I don't believe in what I'm doing, then they definitely know. Maybe they don't consciously know, but subconsciously, I know that there's like an uneasiness there. So yeah, I would love to explore more of your pieces in the future, and especially like in this transition back to performing live for people.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. I totally agree with you. So I believe in energy, when we are not, so as a performer, I believe also when we are not in a sense of ease, we cannot send the vibe to the audience the same sense. So they can sense it, as you say, if not consciously, maybe subconsciously or unconsciously even. So that's kind of, it happens to me, like I believe we're all energy beings. So it's like in spirituality. So when we go to a guru or a master, a Sufi master, he should be in a position to give us, to send us peace. If he himself is an anxious, definitely it will kind of send all those energy to others. So that's well said. And and when he played that piece, actually, I could feel from the video that that was it was the piece that I was not, as a composer, even I was not nervous. I was enjoying the piece because I knew that you kind of internalize the piece, which really I felt it as a composer. Maybe also other audience might feel the same way. And it's very true that what you said about, if you're in a sense of ease, that's the time when we can, or if we enjoy the music without like worrying what's next, then the audience will definitely, even if we act like we are very calmer, but if you are not inside, that also affects them in a way, because this human beings are very amazing um, creations. So I totally agree, and I'm looking forward also to write more and to be part of your wonderful projects, and to get rid of this anxiety as a performer.
Well, that's
Wonderful.
great. And I look forward to it too. And I also look forward to finding ways to work with my performance anxiety. We can work through it together. So thank you so much for your time, Milad.
Oh, you're welcome. Always my pleasure anytime.